Let us analyze the interconnected components of revenue management, which begins right from market segmentation, followed by demand forecasting, budgeting, and benchmarking. Then we go on to yield management, followed by pricing strategies, which form an essential component. Now let us understand market segmentation. As we all know, that is one of the key aspects of revenue management because it allows hotels to differentiate between the different types of clientele and devise and optimize appropriate pricing strategies accordingly. And market segmentation is beneficial for hotels to identify trends on the purpose of the trip. For example, if it's a certain clientele who's visiting our hotel for the first time, and it's easy to understand for what purpose have they come to stay or to visit the certain place. It could either be primarily for tourism, or it could either just be just a vacation, or it could be for business purposes. So it's therefore important to understand the purpose of the trip. And market segmentation does consider demographics such as age, gender, marital status, and spending patterns based on each demographic or each category. And segments more specifically include MICE, known as meetings, incentives, conventions, and exhibition clients. It could also include business and corporate clients. It could include leisure guests. It could include tourists. It could also include transients, those who just like to stay in the hotel for a few hours before catching their flight. And we also have millennials, which is a very new concept or a new segment that hotels do cater to. Now, there are several hotels that uh, are lifestyle oriented. One such hotel is the Citizen M in New York, and the Marriott's Edition brand. Although it's a luxury property, but it focuses more on the millennials and it's more of a lifestyle oriented hotel. So again, it's important to understand the different segments that a hotel caters to. And at the same time, revenue management comes into play when it comes to optimizing appropriate pricing strategies for catering to these particular segments. We also include OBEs, or online booking engines, namely, for example, Expedia, which again, revenue managers, they do consider online booking platforms, and we see which is the most profitable, the most revenue generating channel of distribution. Online travel agents being one of them, and even the direct bookings, that means bookings directly from the hotel's website. So these are several aspects that revenue managers and revenue analysts do consider. Now let us understand the benefits of effective market segmentation. It leads to a better customer understanding because it lays a foundation for understanding customer behavior and booking patterns. Then it leads to superior insights because it guides efficient, accurate forecasting combined with insights such as the booking pace and the booking channels and the geographic regions or origin of business statistics and spending patterns. So again, it gives a more deeper insight. And at the same time, it also leads to enhanced pricing and optimization as strategies consider revenue spending streams and also often lead to more effective plans. Then it also leads to effective use of budgets. Now, budgeting also comes into play because effective segmentation provides guidance for better utilization of both marketing as well as operational budgets. So it is again important to consider market segments because it simplifies the process of which revenue management duties and responsibilities and revenue generating tactics would come into play. Last but not the least, it leads to increased profitability in the long run because In the end of the day, we are able to identify the most profitable segments, or those segments that are generating more revenue, and we optimize strategies that are appropriate. And at the same time, the less revenue generating segments also are a key area of concern, because revenue managers or revenue analysts, they would optimize pricing and manage occupancy accordingly. Now, there are several business generating opportunities due to market segmentation. One is hotels can offer discounts, or, for example, loyalty programs. Starwood preferred guests and Marriott Bonvoy. Now, we are aware that Marriott has acquired Starwood in the year 2016. However, there are loyalty programs. For example, there are certain points upon say more number of stays or more number of visits to a particular property. Based on that, customers and guests would avail of the loyalty points and may avail of certain benefits or privileges upon the next visit or the future visits. And mobile bookings, again, it's again important to engage in mobile exclusive promotions, followed by direct bookings that make offers that only exist on the hotel's website, because direct bookings are a source of higher source of revenue. Then again, walk-ins. We have to For walk-in guests, it's always beneficial to entice extra spending with amenities. Amenities in this case would include the spa, the gymnasium, and F&B outlets and other opportunities and other amenities that walk-in guests could avail of when they visit the property. Again, corporate clients. Now, there are certain hotels that negotiate rates with large companies, and there are some large companies, even airline companies, for example. Say one particular airline company has a tab with a particular group of hotels within the country, and accordingly a corporate rate would be allotted to those who are members or of these large companies. So again, corporate clients and offering corporate rates is also highly important. And OTAs are again advertising special event packages from platforms such as booking.com, which is very, very widely used across the world. Then again, combining with groups, combining tour operators and attractions, combining with them is highly essential, and it's very important to conduct uh, tour operations in collaboration with the hotels, leading to higher revenue and leading to more people and more customers coming and staying at this particular brand of hotel. Now, further moving on, let's understand what demand forecasting is, because we have to understand the demand trends, because demand ultimately directly affects the occupancy levels of hotels. So, demand forecasting is nothing but an analysis of information about past demand across all the customer segments that we have discussed in the previous slide under market segmentation, followed by historical data that makes it easier to predict the demand patterns and develop and optimize distribution strategies accordingly. It gets easier to predict the demand patterns. At the same time, it also leads to setting of prices and creating promotions or other marketing tactics to increase occupancy in the long run. Then there's a concept of constrained demand and unconstrained demand, where constrained demand is only confined to the number of rooms by physical inventory. On the other hand, unconstrained demand uh, is nothing but maximum bookings a hotel can receive with unlimited rooms based on demand and not limited by physical inventory. Now, these are revenue management tactics and strategies that play a very, very vital role via the booking channels and distribution channels. And here, most likely OTAs do play a vital role in this regard. Then again, demand forecasting leads to a better calculation of occupancy and understanding the occupancy level of the hotel, the revenues generated based on these demand trends and patterns and spending patterns and spends per room, the room rates, the turnover, any regrets, denials, reservation and marketing trends. So it does play a vital role. And demand forecasting, it is easier to understand a forecast which is equal to actual plus predicted. Now, actual is something that is taken place in actuality, and predicting is when we apprehend or we predicted that the demand level would be at, say, occupancy level would be at 50%, but in actuality, it is at 60%. So there's a variance, there's a positive variance of 10%. On the other hand, if predicted is more than actual, then it's a negative variance. So how do we understand demand forecasting? Now, with the help of this simple formula and this diagram, under a high forecast demand, we determine a higher price point, and ultimately it maximizes revenue during the high peak season. And during the low peak season, we forecast low forecast demand. That means the prices would be low in order to maximize occupancy. So here demand has a direct correlation, a direct relation with pricing and revenue. And during high forecast and low forecast demand, there exists a variable demand. And there's a huge price point between the maximum revenue and the maximum occupancy, which is nothing but the high price and low price points respectively. So this is how demand forecasting does take place in hotels, and it's a very vital aspect of revenue management. Now, budgeting, again, as I previously mentioned, it's very important to maintain budgets. As I had mentioned in the previous slide, when it came to demand forecasting, budgeting plays a vital role because it's nothing but it considers the difference between actual values and predicted values. It appears as a set business plan. So, on the basis of historical data, it's easier to uh, come up with budgeting plans, appropriate budgeting plans, and account for the future as well. It's an instrument of control efficiency because budgeting also leads to cost effective and cost controlling measures. And as mentioned before, it compares planned and actual results in within a business in a financial year. And it also continuously examines the results of its operations. Now, there again is a continuous examination of the result of operations because then it really sets a goal and it sets a business plan for revenue analysts or revenue managers or associates to achieve in the long run. Hotels, we need to know budgeting is done and forecasting is done either daily, weekly, or month to date and year to date. So here we compare and contrast the results of one particular year with the previous years and the current year and the previous year, where we anticipate values and we anticipate results and then we compare and contrast the same. There are several aspects such as occupancy, the revenue, and the average room rate that do play a vital role in determining hotel metrics and identifying key performance indicators and accordingly comparing the same from the current year to the previous year and see how well the hotel business is performing. Now, hoteliers do extract a lot of information from the property management system. This data is extracted from the PMS. Now, and most of the people would be associated with Micros or Oracle Opera. They may be familiar with it. And it is a very user friendly property management system software where, with the help of just a simple click of a button, the manager's report is prepared automatically, and also the budgets The budgeting is done correctly, accurately, taking into consideration the previous year's results and metrics, which is occupancy and the revenue per available room, as well as the average room rate. So, they are the three key metrics that revenue managers do consider, and all this information is can be easily extracted out from the property management system. Now, there are several essential factors in budgeting that we must consider. One is the RevPAR and ADR. As I mentioned, it's a revenue per available room, and the formula for RevPAR I will be addressing in the metrics section of this module. Now, RevPAR and ADR. RevPAR is revenue per available room, which is the room revenue divided by rooms available to sell. And ADR, on the other hand, is room revenue divided by rooms sold already. So there are again groups and events, because on basis of previous information, it is easier to assess and analyze the group trends and even perform budgeting in a more effective manner. And it also helps in identifying the demand patterns and the demand levels when there's lower distressed sales and there's medium and high occupancy. So it's important to consider budgeting over here and demand forecasting, because they both go hand in hand. Last but not the least, public holidays or bank and school holidays do have an impact on revenue management and does affect budgeting and demand forecasting as well. Because hotels usually forecast daily, weekly, month to date, and year to date. So it is important to take into consideration public or bank holidays and school holidays, because some amount of variances do exist between two different particular years. Now here, this is just a sample projection template of hotels of 5 different years. This is on an Excel format. The hotel information, the rooms and the days open, 300 days open, which is equivalent to 7,500 room nights. And year one occupancy rate was 45%, and it's gone all the way to 70% at the end of year five. So here, this is a 5 years forecast that has been analyzed. So the occupancy trends and the revenue trends and the average daily room rate trends and other revenue generating aspects and avenues such as F&B and other areas, could be spa and other amenities, the usage of these services and amenities, and even revenue generated from rooms has been steadily increasing each year. So it's important to understand the concept of budgeting and demand forecasting, which go hand in hand in revenue management. Now, moving forward, benchmarking is another essential tool. Benchmarking involves measuring and evaluating a performance of one hotel against their competitors. Now, there are several competitive sets that are also involved in this regard. Now, benchmarking a definition more specifically would include an analysis which determines areas for improvement based on how competitors are performing. Now, the criteria of benchmarking could also include prices. If it's a luxury hotel, then the prices and the products, what are the amenities and what are the features the rooms have. These areas hotels compete in, the level of service, the location and the distribution channels, how many direct bookings are being received and how many OTA bookings are there, because direct bookings are more profitable and generate more revenue as compared to online travel agents. So now these are all aspects for benchmarking, and a competitive set would involve metrics such as RevPAR, ADR, and occupancy, where one particular hotel is compared with 5 other hotels. So there are 6 hotels in a competitive set. And these are the aspects that and the metrics or the key performance indicators that are always considered while benchmarking, which is revenue per available room, the average daily rate or the average room rate, and the occupancy levels. during a certain period of time. A hotel financial year ends on 31st March and begins on 1st April. So this is how hotels do forecast and do even consider benchmarking techniques as part of competition. Now, a particular hotel may use more than one competitive set, could comprise of several competitive sets. For example, if we are considering a city in India, say Kolkata, and in the airport vicinity, there are n number of hotels. Some of the common hotels would include the Fairfield or the Courtyard, and it could also include the Holiday Inn Express. So, accordingly, a competitive set near the airport could be created accordingly by STR, so known as Smith Travel Research, an organization that provides competitive set and hotel data, provides benchmarking data and reports, star reports that I will be addressing later on in this module, whereby a hotel can assess their performance based on their competitors. So it could either be in the base of location, either if it's in the airport area, or on the category of luxury hotels within a radius of say 500 meters or 1000 meters. So this is how benchmarking is usually done. There are several parameters that are considered in benchmarking. This is a typical example of a competitive set report, where, as I mentioned, that it uses metrics such as occupancy, ADR, and RevPAR percentage change. So this is what a typical competitive set report looks like. It shows the competitive set, one hotel, one particular property, where it stands amongst its competitors. And a percentage change is also calculated, which is nothing but the new value minus old value upon old value into 100%. The percentage change could be higher or lower, and the same is explicitly mentioned over here in this diagram. Moving forward, let us understand what yield management is. Now, the concept of yield management was first initially implemented in the airline industry, because the main objective and goal of yield management is to define the best possible price to sell its products to maximize profits. The concept appeared much earlier than revenue management, and it is a narrower concept because the concept of yield management was applied in airlines in the 1970s, and eventually yield management came into the hotel industry in the form of revenue management in the 1980s. Now, revenue management is focused on the overall revenue of a business, because it just doesn't consider the best price to sell products with the maximum profit, but it also considers other aspects of the overall revenue of a business. F&B areas and F&B outlets, cafes, spa and amenities, and other aspects are also considered in revenue management. Yield management focuses only on the price and the volume of sales. Now, there are several yield tactics in revenue management, and its most basic fundamental application. So now again, the maximum length of stay, it is nothing but is a reservation that is restricted to a maximum duration. It is often used to limit the availability of discount or promotional rates. And a minimum LOS is a reservation restricted to a minimum duration, often used as during high demand rates to optimize on demand for longer stays of stay. This is for longer lengths of stay. A close to arrival would include no reservations being permitted with arrival on a particular day, which is often used to encourage stays into shoulder dates, but risk turning away long stay bookings. So this is close to arrival. Then there are allocations and last room availabilities as well. So these are yield tactics that are applicable in the concept of revenue management, because allocations would be room allocations to certain partners within the hotel and at a discounted rate. or there are certain OTAs that the hotel works closely with or associated with, and rooms are allocated to them. So this is a tactic of generating revenue in the long run, because OTAs are also highly essential and extremely beneficial for hotels, and in boosting up the revenue, because usually people opt for online travel agent websites such as traveloka.com and booking.com, and Expedia, which is an online booking engine, and these platforms, and Make My Trips, so that they can make reservations. And if there's, yes, if customers or guests, potential guests, if they seek to say visit Kolkata, so that means they will have to come and stay in our particular hotel. So OTAs do help in promoting a particular property, in the sense that search engine optimization, which is known as SEO, whereby, for example, if a guest would go on an OTA application such as booking.com or Traveler, Oka or Travel City, it'll be possible to just type out luxury hotels in Kolkata, where my hotel would feature number one or number two on the list. So these are essential tactics, and these are examples of how yield tactics come into play in the concept of revenue management. And as far as last room availabilities is concerned, key accounts are guaranteed availability within the hotel or on the room type they have contracted rates for, and as long as the room type is still available for sale. So again, it's on the basis of the room type, and if rooms are not available for sale, then again the hotel comes up with a very smart tactic in upgrading the guest to a higher category of room. So again, accordingly, revenue management, yield management, they do go hand in hand, and it is an essential component of revenue management. Now, pricing strategies. Dynamic pricing, it is an approach that allows retailers to change the price according to the demand. So now most hotels engage in dynamic pricing. Based on the high and low peak seasons, prices are set accordingly. For example, if say the December to, let's say the period from October to March is considered as a high peak or a high demand season, accordingly a high price would be set, because it's a peak season where tourists would be visiting particular places. On the other hand, during a dull peak period of season, prices would be set at a lower level where demand is low, in order to increase occupancy, leading to long-term revenue. Now, selling the property for the best price possible, yes, it does consider this. Then the other important aspects of dynamic pricing would consider the demand and supply trends, and demand would be the rooms demanded, and supply is the rooms that are available in the hotel for sale and the rooms inventory. External data would and internal data. Now, internal data would consider segmentation and customer profiling and rates and etc. However, external data considers competitors' prices, weather data, and booking patterns. And dynamic pricing strategies are beneficial because they allow hotels to keep up in the market, to sustain in the market, and maximize occupancy rate, especially during low peak seasons when the demand is low, in order to increase occupancy, leading to an increase in revenue in the long term by keeping prices set at a lower level. Now, there are hotel pricing strategies that are considered over here as part of dynamic pricing. Now, cost-based pricing, it occurs when pricing is driven by financial motives such as equitable profit beyond all costs associated with the sales of the product. It ensures that the hotel achieves its contribution margins targeted by financial executives. And there are pros and cons to each of these approaches. Now, on the downside, it is again a challenge to price correctly to cost, because cost change with volume. So this leads to underpricing when demand is strong and overpricing when demand is weak. So accordingly, now given the COVID-19 pandemic, the situation is very unpredictable. The demand levels are pretty unpredictable because although eventually things are opening up, but at the same time, the demand trends and the demand patterns are different when compared to the previous year. Now, value-based pricing is nothing but value for money, where customers are provided with a certain value and they feel that they are satisfied because they're getting in return value for money. Now, the biggest challenge over here is to raise the willingness to pay a price that reflects the product's true value rather than passively accepting their will. And on the beneficial side of it, once a value based pricing strategy has been correctly implemented, it can bring about higher revenues than competitors because of a higher perceived value of products and services. Because here it is beneficial for hotels and revenue managers to include more package, more plans in the package, and access to more amenities. And here again, we do take into consideration the different plans that are offered according to the guest choice or the guest preferences. Now, whether meal plans, it could be CP, which is a continental plan, will just include a breakfast. And MAP would be a modified American plan, which would include breakfast and either lunch or dinner. It's entirely on the discretion of the guest. It would include, then another would be the American plan, which would include all meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And last but not the least, the European plan would include no meals. So now, accordingly, it is important to understand the needs of the guests and come up with appropriate plans and appropriate packages, the room tariff, as well as the amenities and access to amenities and meals. So these do play a vital role because customers and guests, they feel that they are getting value for money when staying at a property by having access to certain amenities during their stay. Now, customer driven pricing and competition driven pricing are two different aspects of dynamic pricing, because customer driven pricing is entirely based on demand for a service at a certain time, and demand is something that can change rapidly, leading to a rapid change in the occupancy levels over time in the long run, because demand does directly impact the occupancy level of hotels. Pricing is fitted to customers' willingness to pay the biggest possible revenue. However, customers sometimes are not honest with their willingness to pay, and the purpose of revenue management is not only listening to customers' preferences but also raise their willingness to pay a product's true value. So there again, it's important to upsell and come up with appropriate strategies in order to do so. Here again, it's important to play with the human psychology in order to increase demand in the long run and price products, the rooms accordingly. And competition driven pricing would occur when a hotel wants to achieve a market share, a targeted market share, and price their services to achieve this level. And this usually comes together with big revenue and high occupancy. On the downside, focus on market share can lead to inappropriate price cutting, and when followed by competitors will create a downward spiral of prices. So in order to compete with one another, hotels would stoop so low that the prices of the rooms would be low, below the cost price and below the cost of a room. So again, this is a big challenge, one of the major challenges in dynamic pricing. Open pricing, on the other hand, defines a flexibility where hotels can set their prices at different levels depending on the various target markets and distribution channels. Now, this is important to understand because there are several distribution channels, and it is very obvious that hotels and OTAs there's like a marginal difference or marginal price fluctuation between the two rates. Say for example, if I would like to stay in the city of Kolkata, and the best hotel, one of the best luxury hotels would be the JW Marriott Hotel. And if I were to uh, spend a night or two in the hotel, if I would check the same rate of a deluxe room, the basic category of room, on via the online travel agent platforms such as booking.com or Expedia, the rates would be say X. And if I were to book from the hotel's website directly, the rates will be slightly higher. There's like a marginal difference. So again, at the same time, open pricing does optimize the appropriate distribution channels across various target markets. So this is the whole key to understand. And it's important to understand that your pricing is somewhat flexible, and there's this marginal difference between booking directly and via booking from OTAs. But however, the trend is more is that more and more people are making reservations from OTAs rather than directly from the hotel's website. Open pricing enables hotels to forecast more accurately because, again, forecasting is highly important. It's an essential aspect because unless price forecasting and demand forecasting is not done in the correct manner, appropriate optimizing appropriate pricing strategies would be ineffective or futile. So now what are the factors that are influencing pricing strategies? We need to understand what the guests want and what strategy will complement the business mix. How will different strategies affect the connected channels and distribution partners? Now, there are certain examples such as skimming pricing strategy for positioning a hotel amongst the most expensive, and price leaders often achieve among the highest profitability. However, the consumers, they need to clearly understand that the reasons they would like to pay more for staying at the hotel. So it is again a very profitable pricing strategy. Penetration would again lead to positioning yourself for the hotel as the cheapest in the market, and to be mindful of how travelers will perceive the hotel. You need to retain the opportunity to sell at higher rates, because yes, pricing and positioning also does play a vital role. So positioning would again mention about how your rates of brand strength and reputation are based on what factors. And price per segment would offer the same product at different prices to different types of consumers. For example, a family booking would be allotted, say, a certain discount or a certain privilege or a special rate. And length of stay is also a major aspect. It is where demand outweighs supply. It can be help to implement a rule where guests are obligated to stay a minimum number of days. In such cases, low rates may not be necessary. So yeah, this is irrespective of the rates, but it's mainly based on the demand. So now this again depends on the season, whether it's a high or a low peak season. Accordingly, it shall be done. And pricing strategies have to integrate very well with the distribution channels. As I previously mentioned, that rates differ from OTAs and from the hotel website, but there's a marginal difference. However, it is more profitable for hotels to encourage direct bookings rather than OTAs. And who are the experts that can determine the right strategy in the marketing mix? So, yes, the interconnected components of revenue management are extremely important because they are known as the pillars or the backbones in this concept of revenue management.